for Bordeaux has been one of the saddest stories in football. One of the most successful clubs in French football, a club with tremendous history and tremendous players such as the great Zinedine Zidane, now is no longer even a professional club. So how exactly has this happened? Let's take a look at the tragic story of how Bordeaux, a club founded in 1920, officially closed down in 2024 after 104 years as a professional football club. Now this is a long story, so let's begin with maybe the last time Bordeaux were in a stable condition as a club. The 2016-17 and 17-18 seasons brought European finishes, but as Bordeaux set sail on continental road trip, the wheels started to come off. Gus Boyett was the mastermind behind their 6th place finish in 2018, but by September he was gone following comments made against the club's transfer policy, as Bordeaux sold Guidel aboard against his knowledge. This sent the club off course, with Ricardo Gomez coming into little effect that August. The club failed to pick up a point from their first Europa League games and was at 11th in Ligue at the start of August. General America Capital Partners, known as GACP, splashed out $82 million to acquire the club at the start of November. Now it sparked protest among the sections of the fans as they believe the American hedge fund were only there to make a quick buck without any knowledge or care for football, and the ill feeling around the club only grew as the season slogged on. A 3rd place finish in the Europa League groups sent them crashing out before Gomez himself was dismissed in March, with the club sat 13th in the table. Paulo Sousa was brought in but won just 2 of a final 11 games that season, meaning Bordeaux finished a lowly 13th place in Ligue. Despite several years of steady building since their last Ligue crown, Bordeaux seemingly had managed to undo all of it after a couple of poor decisions that season. Fans knew that GACP had little interest in the club, while the prior decision to up sticks from the Stade Chabon Delmas, which was their home for almost 80 years, and move to the new stadium in 2015 was affecting the club. To arrest the slide, the likes of Malcolm, Wabe Khazri and Adam Unas were sold between 2016 and 2018, but the ones which hurt most came during 2019-2020. A product of the famed Bordeaux euphorics, Jules Koundé was sold to Seville for 31 million, a strong fee for somebody who had played just over 50 league games, but one that reeked of poor future planning. Koundé was destined for the very top of the game, but a figure placed him just 29th in the list of Ligue 1 exports, behind the likes of Jeffrey Kondogbia, Michy Batshuayi and Michael Essien, which was a transfer which took almost 15 years prior. This had the alarm bells ringing and confirmed to the Bordeaux fans that yes, GACP were just there for the money and did not care about the on-pitch performances or a long-term vision. In December 2019, Bordeaux found themselves in the heady heights of 3rd, but 4 straight defeats sent them tumbling towards 13th, and later in the month things only got worse as the plot behind the takeover thickened. As it turned out, GACP were heavily bankrolled by investment firm King Street Capital and Fortress Investment Group, and so only retained a decisions, basically meaning they ran the club but did not actually fully own it and were not majority shareholders. These three groups had a falling out about how the club was being run, so King Street Capital bought out GACP's shares of Bordeaux, and this is where everything starts to go left. In January 2020, Bordeaux said goodbye to their second world-beating youth product in the space of just 6 months, as Aurélien Tchouameni departed for fellow Ligue side Monaco for just 16 million, as the club's faithfuls' worst fears were being realised right before their eyes. Foreign investment groups and hedge funds getting involved in football clubs brings plenty of skepticism, but especially in France at this time. They were around the corner from a lucrative television deal between Mediapro and Ligue 1, meaning that clubs, if the deal had gone through, could be able to afford to borrow money, safe in the knowledge that a mouth-watering €780 million deal was heading their way. But 2020 was torturous for not only Bordeaux but the entirety of Ligue 1. The COVID-19 pandemic sunk practically all other teams to their knees and curtailed the campaign, which ended the club in 12th before the lucrative Mediapro deal was terminated, as they did not have the funds to complete the deal anymore. Bordeaux owners KCP pulled all funding in preparation for this, and to only add to their popularity, took it upon themselves to change the historic Bordeaux badge to further infuriate a now disillusioned fan base. They received 15 million from player sales, but signed nobody for a fee, as the once sustainable and profitable summers which saw Bordeaux compete and reinvest had morphed into a desperate bid to survive as a football club. Sosa resigned as manager shortly before the season started and was replaced by Laurent Blanc's former assistant manager from the league winning days, Jean-Louis Gasset. Tasked with reinvigorating a mishmash of a squad amid a backdrop of ownership difficulties and a fractured fan base, Gasset presided over another difficult campaign, which saw a run of just 2 wins from 15 plunge the club into danger. Towards the end of that run, the owners officially placed the club into administration to make an already dire situation seemingly fatal. Gasset managed to arrest the slide, however, as Bordeaux won 3 of their final 4 games to stay clear of relegation from Ligue 1, but choppy waters still lay ahead. Now in administration, the club had to find a buyer promptly, or would suffer immediate relegation to the second division. The man who would save them was Gerard Lopez. Lopez had recently presided over a successful time at Lille, where he oversaw the club's rise from relegation threatened to title challenging, and many Bordeaux fans were hoping for something even half as good as that, but they were vastly wrong. Vladimir Petkovic was brought in from the Swiss national team and was allowed to spend 8 million as the club shopped in the bargain bin of free agents, loans and modest fees for players, all while Lopez worked frantically in the background to turn the squad. But it didn't work as successfully as it did at Lille, with many senior members of the squad departing or dragging their heels in the youth setup, while the club looked to sanction moves away. Squad morale plummeted, and by February, Petkovic was gone, with the club second from bottom in Ligue 1. Jaroslav Basile temporarily took charge, a legendary Bordeaux midfielder who played over 300 times for the club after signing in 2009, which was ironically the end of the club's golden era, and he was now witnessing the end of a very different one before his eyes. He lost his only match in charge before David Guon was tasked with saving a club that had now reached the bottom of the league and were in terminal decline. Just 2 wins from 14 games followed, and relegation was confirmed. They may have survived enforced relegation at the beginning of the season, but they managed it all on their own during the campaign, with the worst yet to come. Relegation to the 3rd tier was looming large, as debts racked up to €40 million. The DNCG are in charge of watching over French football teams' finances, and had initially decided to demote the club even further if they did not sort out their debt, but the club's future was saved by its illustrious past. As Koundé and Tchouaméni moved to Barcelona and Real Madrid respectively, the club netted a windfall of around €13 million, while selling Sekou Mara to Southampton for €11 million, as the club's youth setup accounted for over half of the outstanding debt. Lopez added an additional €10 million from his own pocket, meaning the debt was cleared and the decision was reversed, and Bordeaux lived to fight another day in the 2nd tier. Bordeaux now had only one goal, and that was to return to the top flight. A return to the top flight would not save the club, but it would greatly ease the club's financial pressures. In perhaps the most unfortunate and potentially biggest butterfly effect of all time, Ligue had reduced the number of participants from 20 to 18 this season, so only the top 2 in Ligue 2 secured promotion this year for the first time ever. Of course, Bordeaux finished 3rd, 3 points behind 2nd place. If that decision had been delayed one more year, then Bordeaux would have returned to Ligue 1. Who knows where the club would be now if they had managed to go up that year. So, after narrowly missing promotion, it's 2023 now, and the club looked pretty healthy from the outside. The DNCG has no fundamental reason to sanction Bordeaux, and in Bordeaux they are once again chasing promotion to Ligue 1. However, yet again, Bordeaux sell their young prospects in junior Manga and Dilit Bagua for €10 million a piece. This helped get rid of their debt, but heavily weakened the squad as many key players also departed this summer. Naturally, the consistent selling of key players would eventually catch up to them, and they had a disastrous season, finishing 12th in Ligue 2 and nowhere near the promotion spots, with the season by January basically over. At this point, Lopez was raging, and no wonder why. With the millions of euros he has put into the club, he was not even partially returning. He was in the red and he was tired of it. However, the businessman's often abrupt nature meant that everyone at the club had been under constant pressure. With no return to Ligue 1 likely, Lopez decided in January he was done with his project and would stop pumping money into this club. The result was cruel for everyone: players, coaches, officials, fans, and regional political leaders. No new investor was found, and the guillotine of the DNCG was felt. At the end of April 2024, the final passages of the league season were approaching, and Bordeaux seemed to be when the project put forward by the DNCG to attract a new investor collapsed. Lopez said he would stop investing, but that was only because he required another investor to come in and help him, as he was simply wasting his money. However, they could not find one. Ever since last September, someone like that had been sought after actually, but it was evident that the problems of the club were of no small nature, and the negotiations with investors ended pretty promptly once they viewed the accounts. According to documents presented, 4 companies were interested in being investors, but again, as soon as they had access to the club's accounts and saw the dire situation Lopez had put them in, they refused and negotiations ended. In essence, Lopez established that a deal would not be possible if the club did not stay in Ligue 2. Lopez told everyone that he was too busy with all these talks and couldn't be present in Bordeaux, but when he wanted to, he found the time. At the end of March, for example, it emerged that he had called the CEO on his mobile phone at half-time of the game against Paris FC and told him, in short, you can find a new club if you don't win the game. It was not unusual for Lopez to treat his employees like this. After the end of last season, he did not want to go to Bordeaux end of season's talk, and through his intermediary, Lopez said he would no longer reach deep into his pockets to experience a season as bad as this, and many changes would be made. When die-hard fans heard this, they put up a banner saying, "You are no messiah if you leave the club to disaster every season." Weeks passed, and on June the 27th, the main hearing with the DNCG took place. Now, it was rumoured that the international bank, which Lopez was negotiating with, had asked public figures in Bordeaux to act as guarantors for him. Some, such as the mayor and senator of Bordeaux, accepted, but nothing moved forward. Bordeaux did still have 9 more days to find a new owner, as the proceedings were temporarily suspended. Lopez entered into talks with Fenway Sports Group, which owns English giants Liverpool, about handing over a majority stake. On July the 6th, a video conference was held between Lopez and the shareholders of FSG, and the meeting quickly took a bad turn, as it came to light that Bordeaux owed around €10 million to former coach Vladimir Petkovic, and €20 million in rent to the stadium. The question of who would pay the debts came to the table, and tensions crystallized around the stadium. The Americans were told to negotiate with City Hall to reduce the annual fee of about €4 million and renegotiate the contract. That contract was valid until 2045, which the owner then obliged to take over even if the club ceased to exist. Bordeaux officials therefore pushed too far, and the negotiations did not sit well with FSG. A delegation from FSG was going to sign the necessary documents in Bordeaux, but they travelled to no avail, and the deal between FSG and Bordeaux had collapsed due to this. The day after, their sporting director came before his staff and told them that negotiations had failed. Lopez claimed that "I still want the club, but I'm not going to overpay." In a subsequent interview, Lopez did not directly mention that he would again financially support Bordeaux at the level he had in previous seasons. The chance of such a scenario was put to rest, and there were effectively only 3 possible scenarios on the table. The highly unlikely investor who would have to fall from the sky, a drop into the third tier, or even the club's demise. Lopez defended himself, talking about operating costs and the unfavourable economic situation. He couldn't quite admit faults. In his defence, he did return to the negotiating table with FSG again 24 hours before the crucial meeting with the DNCG. He was even willing to agree to pursue any debts through the courts to buy time. But all of this was far too late. The meeting with the DNCG arrived, and the demise was confirmed. Lopez told his friends that he had done everything he could to save the famous club and make a deal with FSG. As far as debts were concerned, everything was on track, especially with Petkovic finding common ground, which was key. There was talk behind the scenes that Lopez would keep the club anyway and would reject any future offers to sell. The only exemption he would make would be if someone was interested as a minority shareholder. However, no new investor came, and with Lopez not willing to pump money into the club, the DNCG at the meeting demoted the club to the third tier, with no owner giving them any sort of funding, and the club already in debt. On Thursday, July the 25th, the club issued a statement announcing that it was shedding its status as a professional football club. Player contracts have been terminated, and the training centre will close as they simply did not have the funds to keep operating at this level as a professional football club. There is no shame in falling down, just in staying down for a long time, goes a French saying. Only time will tell how quickly, and if at all, Bordeaux will get off the ground in the coming years. However, one thing we can all agree on is this is a sad story, and July the 25th, 2024 will officially be recognised as the day Bordeaux, the professional football club, well, officially died. So there we go. That is the story of Bordeaux and what has been going on there. Very, very sad story. I mean, if any of you know anything more about this story than I do, I've got some parts wrong about this, let me know. If you live in France, maybe if you're a Bordeaux fan, I mean, if I have any of you watching, gosh, I wonder what you're going through, but I mean, hopefully they can bounce back from this and become a professional club once again. But yeah, just a real sad story. Might have to do a rebuild on them though. that's the only good thing that's come out of this. Anyways, hope you guys have enjoyed, and if you have enjoyed, please leave a like, consider subscribing